In the people and teams getting restless. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Offences Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor John Walker and I'm the chair of this committee. And Councillor Lees is teaming in from Dubai. Looking very healthy with the sunshine over there. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Members in the chamber, when you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphones on. Please turn your microphones off when you finish speaking. If you're joining the meeting through Teams, please use the raised hand function on your iPad to indicate you wish to speak. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm does sound, please exit the way you came in. Okay. Apologies, Chair.
No apologies have been received.
Apologies, thank you. Right, we'll move on to the minutes of 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings we've had. 30th of September, 28th of September, that was a performance panel, 16th of December, performance panel, and 13th of January for the performance panel. Are those all a true record of those meetings?
Can I propose those minutes, Chair, please?
Have we seconded?
Not quite, Chair. On the so the fourth item there, so the Thursday, 13th of January, get to page 136. Just a brief, just a small correction. I'd asked a question about time credits being used at leisure centres. It says here that that was a question about the staff using them. That wasn't included in my question. It was more directed at members of the public. So if that could be amended, I think everything else is in order.
Can we do that? It's okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, go on to item 5. Sorry. Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I've just lost the link to the item I want to raise, but obviously since you dealt with the minutes all in bulk, I'll let someone else find it for you, which is just the issue around the sustainable transport and not the oversight, but the inability for us to bring together a team of people to scrutinise cycling.
Yes.
Under that task group, and actually at every single meeting I think I've attended of scrutiny, I've actually asked. I said that I would deal with it on my own and ask for witnesses, and if there's still not an appetite to do it, which I hope there is, I might just have to go away and organise some sort of public event, because it's far from satisfactory that it's not been assigned a specific time.
I think now with the new highway code, well, it will be very good to have a agenda item or a special meeting for cycling and what have you. It all seems to have changed.
Well, no, it hasn't actually in regards to the highways code for cycling. I would rather keep it as cycling. Behave with the cyclists. I'd rather keep it separate. Actually, well, there's a lot
I wasn't thinking that, but probably people now, if we put a request out for coming to a meeting about cycling, you'd probably get more members interested.
Yeah, but I certainly don't want a car lobby to be turning up. I'd rather specifically be dealing with a positive scrutiny task group around sustainable transport involving cycling in the future of cycling within the borough.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, Chair, just for a point of clarification, I think there was one meeting where there was some conflict where we were trying to establish what subject would go forward as a task group and what would be added to the work programme for this year. At a subsequent meeting, we decided that the task group should be select move for this year. Members took a democratic vote on that. I don't know if Councillor Berry was present, but I think the issue of cycling should definitely be one that we can consider for the work programme. Looking at the agenda tonight, that's something we can consider for a meeting going forward. So I'm not necessarily sure it needs bringing up in the minutes, as I think it has been discussed and a consensus was reached about taking select move forward. So, like I say, I think we can discuss it further on if we want to add that to a subsequent meeting.
I think when we come to the work programme, we can discuss it further anyway. We're going to take it further. Yes, Councillor Bray.
Could I just clarify, it's not in competition for a new item on the work programme. It's an outstanding issue that we were unable to address at the time because we ran out of allocated time. So it's not something, could be something that quite easily could be running in parallel with any other aspirations people have got for the work programme. It's outstanding and actually is a vital part of consultation and feedback from the community to enable us to shape the next local plan and transport policy. So especially with the greater Lancashire transport policy that was...
Right, we'll keep a note of that, and if we can get it on to the next, or the last overview and scrutiny meeting of the year, we'll get it as an agenda item. Okay?
No, it's all right. I'll like I say, I might have to go in a different direction. Thanks very much for your time on that matter.
Right, okay. We'll go back to the item 5 on the agenda, which is declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of the responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in the agenda. Item 6 then is public questions. Have any public questions?
There's been no questions,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Right, can we look at item 7, which is the scrutiny of the executive minutes for various cabinet on the 11th of November, 9th of December and 20th of January. I think they've all been through council. It's a question of whether anybody's got any questions or any thing they want to mention about. Yes, Councillor Bray.
Just beg my patience, please. Well, I'm begging your patience, Chair. By putting things into one group, we're not really giving enough, even though there might not be questions, enough time on individual items. And actually, I did have an item to raise on agenda item 7. But have you moved now on to notice of executive decisions, page 29? Is that where you're at now?
I will
Just
be
to clarify.
in a second, page 29.
Still on item 7. Let's go back to item 7.
Which cabinet papers are you on?
No, I'm okay with item 7. I was just asking if there was anyone here that could comment about the purchase of Yarra Valley Country Park, just following on from Tuesday night's full council meeting, or whether the purchase of the additional land would allow the council to do some remodelling of their existing sites, because it would be, you know, there was some criticism about it just being for tree planting, but the existing site warrants really looking about what the facilities we can actually bring to it. So I'd just like to see something, some answer on that really, if the council is actually going to scope something out for the wider footprint.
Well, basically, it's something. Yes, Councillor Woods.
As I said on Tuesday's meeting, only part of the land that we're purchasing is going to be used for tree planting. So there's another part that we left as grassland. And of course, you've also got the river there, but also you've got wetlands as well. So there's a mixture of offering. The idea is to sort of allow the sort of natural habitat to flourish there, and therefore, you know, the work on the biodiversity gain, as we referenced, is set to be done as well. So it's a mixture of the two. But I mean, if you've got any specifics or what you think should be included, I mean, there's no reason why we can't look at anything if you've got any further ideas of what should be on there. But that's what it is intended for at the moment, and I'm not aware of anything else.
I'll just quickly come back. I think was probably looking at education resources on site. I think, yeah, on the older site or whatever, just some remodelling.
Happy to have a look at it, Chair. As, you know, once we've bought the land, it's ours, and we can then look at how we use it to the best of our abilities.
Okay, Councillor Burr.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, just another brief one on the minutes, Chair. So page 139 for this item, Executive Cabinet from last week. I was actually present in that meeting as well, so under the other members might have sounded silent, but don't worry, I was there for the duration, paying attention, so if that could be amended, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that. Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is the notice of executive decisions. As you can see, there are, I won't say hundreds of decisions going to be made over the next pages 27 to 100, so there's a lot of executive decisions going to be made over the next few months, presumably up to the end. I don't know what the last date is, really. I always just say about all these is, if there are any decisions coming up over the next few weeks or months that you're not happy with or want more clarification before they get to the Cabinet or the actual Cabinet member makes the decision, well, let myself know or Matthew, and then we can take it further if there are any decisions I think could be controversial and need to be looked at in more detail. I'm not going to go through all these really, but I say if there are any, I'm quite happy to look at them in more detail. Yes, Councillor Berry.
I'd actually just like to say, this gender item doesn't really work for me, and I don't know what other members think. Really, you're quite right. There's something like 160 odd decisions, key decisions being made, 73 pages worth of decisions, and obviously, in the olden days, the key decisions used to come to scrutiny first before they went to Cabinet and full council. So it's just whether or not members here think that there's enough scrutiny being given to key decisions, when I think for the past few meetings that I've attended, there's been virtually no comment, and it would really, really help, I think, if on the tables there was links to the background papers, so that if people are preparing for the meeting, they've got the option of being able to tap on a link and get the detailed reports, so that enables them to weigh up whether there's something that they do want to raise. But at the moment, it's almost like there's a need for it to be here, but we're actually not. Yeah,
I don't dispute what you're saying, but you can always call any decision in that is made by any Cabinet member or any Cabinet meeting. You've always got 7 days after the decision is made to call the decision in. If you feel it isn't correct or you want some clarification, it is available, the call-in situation. That's all I can say. I agree, it isn't ideal, and it's something we might well look at for next year or the next municipal year. But to look at all these in detail would mean having a meeting almost every week. But if people have got any queries on these decisions, I'm quite happy to look at them and bring them back to a meeting if necessary. Councillor Molyneux.
Thanks, Chair. It's not necessarily a comment on the decision. It's actually the presentation of it is very, very difficult to read and to actually go through. There's like 3 items more max on a page, very small. And once you blow it up, the next page you come to, it's back to this. So it really makes it, when it's that long, very, very difficult.
I don't dispute anything you're saying. I agree.
If it could be presented in a better format, it might help. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's something
just an observation.
It's something we could probably look at in some detail. Whether probably the main items could be given in more detail and the minor ones not. I don't know. Yeah. Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually going to disagree and perhaps maybe agree with Councillor Wilson's take on this, possibly, that the agenda item decisions, so while it's useful to be aware of it, I don't think we can scrutinise decisions until they've been taken. And say we do have a call-in process for that, so it's useful as a forward plan view of things we might want to consider in our scrutiny work plan or what's potentially happening on those areas. But I don't think we can scrutinise decisions until they've been taken. So it'd be helpful if the links were embedded, though, so if you want to do some research on a paper, but I wouldn't advocate a change myself.
I mean, it might well be there's some way of getting, if a decision is going to be made in a week's time or 10 days' time, it is put on, say, items, so, this decision is going to be made in 7 days' time. Has anyone got any queries or thoughts on the decision that Cabinet member is going to make? I don't know. Councillor, have you any thoughts on how it could be looked at in more detail?
I mean, I've not seen it, so in terms of how it's presented, I mean, if it can be presented in a more user-friendly way, then obviously we should look at that. In terms of the decisions that have been made and the decisions that are to come, they're decisions that we have to take. So you are being notified, the scrutiny members, of what's been done, or is what is going to be done. And therefore, I'm not sure what else we can do about that. Do you want me to, if you want us as a council to make a lot less decisions, we only make 4 a month or something, so you can spend time poring over them. I don't know, but then we won't get anything done, and we'll all be jumping up and down and saying, why hasn't this happened and why hasn't that happened? And so, we've got to act within our authority, and it's right that you see everything that's there. So I don't know what else we can do about that, unless we want to change the whole nature of the way the system runs, which I don't think anyone's proposing just yet.
It's something we might have to look at with the Democratic Service to see whether they can come up with a simpler system. But I say, everybody's got the opportunity of calling it in if they're not happy with it. But it might well be, if they knew a week in advance what was coming up, it might well be able to do something. I don't know. We'll have to look at it in more detail. Yes.
Thanks, Chair. For me, it does look okay to me. I do think that if members do wanted clarity on the decision that's being taken, it does clearly say, I've got one here, executive member resources, they could just approach that cabinet member to get that information from them.
Yes.
I was just going to say, when we had the member support working group meeting the other week, quite a few members, particularly newer members, raised that they weren't actually aware of the extranet, where you can get background papers if they are available. And I think Ruth put 2 training sessions on the week before last on the Monday, or it might have been the Tuesday and the Wednesday evening. I know I found it quite useful in terms of, so if you're looking up Wigan Lane, you just have to type in Wigan Lane and log in with your same. So maybe people might need to maybe have a look at that if they, because I know I didn't really know that was there.
No.
So, thank you.
But I mean, just coming back to, I get all the decisions that have been made. Do all the rest of the councils get the decision that has been made? Yeah. So basically, everybody's got an opportunity of, ringing me up or ringing them to say, look, this has been made, call it in, or do you think it's worth calling in, and take it from there, really, Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I think myself and Councillor Riggott might disagree on a philosophical point about the purpose of scrutiny, that myself and the LGA might believe the point of scrutiny is not just to look back on decisions already made, but to look forward. And I think we do have a system that can do that. That's not the problem. Part of the problem is, how is that report then presented to overview scrutiny? Is it presented in a way that the scrutiny committee can then make use of it, or is it oversaturation, which then degrades the ability of this committee to scrutinise decisions, both those that have already been made and those that are going to be made going forward? It's not a case of us trying to hold up the process. I think we all agree that this council making so many decisions is a proof of a very healthy and strong council. I think for me, rather than scrapping what we've got here, it'd be a case of providing something that is user-friendly. If we can get a summary sheet that lists all the decisions, almost like a contents page, and says you'll find it on page 45, then you get this summary, rather than having to go through 80 pages in a week, when many members also sit on planning, which also has a 100 to 200 page agenda, as well as working groups. We're not really doing our business as a committee. We don't have that information available. Whereas I know members of this committee like to be able to look through a list, find the decisions they want to know more on, and then have that kind of information available.
Yeah, I think years gone by, we used to have a scrutiny meeting the week before the cabinet papers, but then we found we weren't we were scrutinising, but probably always in agreeing. If it came to a vote about what, we always agree what the cabinet are going to decide, and so it eventually, over a period of years or that it came to after the cabinet meetings. But it might well be we have to have the scrutiny meetings before the cabinet, and then we can have advised the cabinet member if we feel there should be some alterations. It's something we'll have to look at, I think, before next year's. Well, I know the diary's out, but it might well be if we want to adjust to the week before, we could do that. Anyway, we'll look at it in more detail, Councillor Berry, and see whether we can come up with a different system. Okay?
Ruth's also happy to put on a session to explain the whole list, or she's happy to provide a report for the next meeting, depending on whatever the council or committee wants.
Okay, thanks for that. Right, we'll move on to item 9, which is a report from Councillor Franz on the health scrutiny that's taken place at County over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you, Councillor Franz.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm actually reporting on the last meeting of the Health Scrutiny, which was held in November. So it was actually the 16th of November, and it feels such a long time ago now that a lot of what was actually discussed is now old news, really. But
How often do the scrutiny committee meet?
there should have been a meeting in December, but that was cancelled.
Right.
And I would imagine the January meeting must be due any time now. Perhaps Kim would know that because she sits on it on a Tuesday. Yeah. So we're kind of looking back 8 weeks, really. And as I say, a lot of this is old news, but for what it's worth, here it is. The bulk of the meeting was spent discussing a presentation from Paul Havey, who is the director of Lancashire and South Cumbria vaccination programme. So it was an update on vaccination, COVID vaccination, of course, across Lancashire. And the figures were quite impressive. So at that time, as I say, these figures relate to the beginning of November. They were saying that over 80% of eligible Lancashire residents had received a first dose of COVID-19 vaccination and over 70% have received a second dose. The vaccine uptake amongst the 12 to 15-year-olds was still low, with only 31% having received a first dose. And then phase 3 of the vaccination was being rolled out by the primary care networks and community pharmacies and vaccination centres. And they went on to talk about trying to reach people with protected characteristics and where there was a low uptake recognised. So in general, levels of vaccination were favourable compared to other parts of Lancashire and across the UK. And there was a programme to target the harder to reach groups. So there was a vaccination bus that went out and about around schools and supermarkets, shopping centres. They went out to homeless shelters, to Gypsy, Roman traveller communities, and there was some engagement with Caribbean and African Health Network. In the case of young people with serious underlying pathology, home visits were arranged to make sure that they were vaccinated. And I was quite impressed to hear that all eligible care homes have been visited by the 31st of October for their third, that is their booster dose. And that was also an offer including the seasonal flu vaccination. So at that stage, it seems hard to think it now, but at that time, they were only starting to roll out the third doses to all adults over the age of 40. So this is where it's difficult to remember where you were in that time, I find. That they were just on the cusp of starting the programme for younger people. And but by and large, it was going well, and there were no particular organisations, any problems with it in general. I think it was a good effort on behalf of Lancashire compared to other parts of the UK. But of course, we haven't to forget that Lancashire was an area that was hit particularly hard by COVID. And then the rest of the meeting, they went on to receive the report of the Lancashire County Council Health Scrutiny Steering Group, which then went on to review its work programme for 21-22. And you'll be interested to know that they have, they're intending to review the new hospitals programme once again, but that's not going to take place until after the long list of 10 options has been reduced down to a short list. So until that we get to that stage, that's not going to move on as yet. And there was a request for mental health activities in Lancashire to be added to the programme for 21-22. And that was about it, really.
Can I just I'm not being critical really, but there never seems to be any scrutiny of various areas to see
No.
whether hospitals are coping, or if they're not coping, why aren't they coping, etc., etc. Doesn't that ever happen?
I think they were just focusing on the vaccination programme and you know, how it had compared to other places. The whole concept of how well Lancashire Teaching Hospitals Trust was able to cope with the COVID was not discussed at this meeting at all. But obviously it's a very important thing.
I mean, on the vaccinations, I mean, did they mention about whether going to indeed about doctors' surgeries, not, you know, taking patients in, or always on Zoom and telephone conversations? Do they ever look at things like that?
I don't know whether that's been discussed in previous meetings, but it certainly wasn't at this occasion.
It's a shame, really, isn't it? It seems as though that they seem to be missing a trick there, the scrutiny could be. Anyway, but I shouldn't really be too critical. Oh, Stephen. Yes, June.
Thanks, Chair. I get that they're concentrating on vaccination programmes and other things, but Adlington Clinic, I'm going down to it, has never reopened since COVID. Not reopened at all. So that means all the residents, Adlington and Heathsharn at Rivington, if they need to go to a clinic, whether it be warfarin clinic, blood clinic, podiatry, mother and baby clinics, other clinics that go, have to come into Charlie or somewhere else, or Collinson Avenue. So I have to take my mother, 98-year-old, to Collinson Avenue to get her there to go to have her feet done, because they won't come out to people either now. So there is an issue that we're being shortchanged in the village, basically. There's no access for people to easily get to a clinic. Only today, a lady spoke to me at the group we have, the pensioners group. When is Adlington Clinic going to reopen? I had to go to the warfarin clinic this week. I have to go to Charlie Hospital. The only way I could get there was taxi. It cost me £13 to get there. And it's a regular thing, a warfarin clinic. You don't just go once a blue moon, you know. So, and it's a lot of money, and a lot of people can't afford that, and they can't get. And that's just one instance. There are other clinics, and we've just not got the access. I've been trying to contact the powers that be, and I know our MP has, and I've not had any answers. I contacted, through Margaret's auspices, Dennis Gizzy, who's been very helpful and tried to, and actually has tried to. He didn't get many answers at first. And after a lot of trying, just before the end of November, I got a message from him that actually said, Adlington Clinic's going to be open 3 days a week, part-time, beginning of December. And then COVID hit again. I've not heard anything. So we're like back to square one with nothing. So is there anything that we can do to put powers on so that we actually know what's happening? There's all kinds of rumours circulating around the village. They're never going to open it again. They're not going to do this. They're going to knock it down. So people make their own stories up, if they will. If they just tell us what's happening,
Well,
I
agree with you saying. I think it is a big problem where individuals.
But that's just one of them.
Yeah. But I mean,
all the other clinics have opened in the area.
Yeah.
All the other clinics, because of people from Adlington are sent to Coppell, Exeter, wherever. And the hospital have enough to do without doing the blood test, without doing the warfarin clinics. And it also, even if you drive, there's a parking charge. And then there was a case, well, nobody can come in with you. Well, people need it. I have to go in with mother. So if we could do something, if we could address that, if we could just ask, just some answers would be good. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Rant over.
Yes, Councillor.
Councillor France, if I could just query what is termed the New Hospitals Programme. This is almost reaching mythological status. 4 or 5 years ago, it was announced that we were going to get a super hospital. They've been closing countless places down around the county. Yet, what stage are we up to? Are there any firmed up plans? Are any decisions being taken? Or Are they just carrying on saying, we're going to do something, but we're not going to tell anybody what's going to happen?
Yes, Councillor.
Shall I answer that? If I could just come back to June's point first about the decisions about the community clinics. I think that's probably a good point because it won't just be Adlington. I'm sure the same thing is happening in the rural health centres where they normally have the same kind of services provided. But you're probably aware that the NHS is in a great period of flux at the moment with primary care. We've lived with the community, I can't say it now, CCGs, clinical commissioning groups, for many, many years, and it's had various morphs. I was in it from the beginning when it was run. Charlie Primary Care Trust, as was run from a farmhouse in Preston, and then it morphed into Central Lancashire CCG as it was then, and that was too big, so then it morphed again into Charlie and South Ribble clinical commissioning group, and each time there's one of these changes, just everything's paralysed for about 2 years while all the changes take place, and I think this is where we're at the moment. So we're in the death throes of the CCG. From memory, I think it was the end of March when they should have ceased to function altogether, with all of that work being taken over by the emerging ICS and ICPs. I'll stop using these abbreviations. So the ICS, the Integrated Care System, is all of Lancashire and South Cumbria, massive area. At local level, the decisions will be taken by the ICP, which is the Integrated Care Partnership, which for our area is Chorley, Preston and South Ribble. So the March date for the changeover has now been put back to July. So we now are in a period where nobody really can make any decisions because they don't know whose decisions they are to make. So I suspect things like you're talking about with the clinics, it's very unlikely you'll get a decision until the new system kind of gets its power. So I apologise for it because it doesn't help anybody. But if there's one gleam of hope in this, it is that the whole ethos of the emerging ICS, ICP system is to move care out of the hospitals, to put care closer to the patient into community hubs. And it seems to me that Adlington Clinic would be a perfect location for that sort of community hubs, where you can put in all your services, like the ones you've described, and maybe some mental health services and some disability services. You could have a dementia day centre there. Do you know what I mean? That's the sort of location where you're looking to put services out of hospital, closer to patients, and you've got a building that's ready to do that. So I would be quite hopeful about the future of it. But when you'll get the answer to your question is another matter altogether.
Yes.
Just come back on that. That would be wonderful if we could get something like that. As I say, it's just the answers. But it is interesting to note that they have actually changed the sign where it used to just say Lancashire Care Trust. It now actually does say Lancashire and South Cumbria Health Trust on. So they've managed to change the sign but not open the clinic. So.
I'm sorry, I'll come back to Terry's point. You were talking about the new hospital programme, yeah? Well, yeah, there's a timely question. With my other hat on this afternoon, I was at the Teaching Hospitals Trust Council of Governors meeting, and they were having an update on the new hospitals programme. So I have to say that there wasn't really any new information in this update, except what we already knew, which is what... I get a bit cynical about this because I've been through the whole process with Our Health, Our Care, which some of you will remember. It's a very long-winded process, and we're in the early stages of it with the new hospitals programme. So a long list of 10 options was drawn up. That long list of 10 options is currently out for consultation. So if you go on the internet and put in New Hospitals Programme Lancashire, you should find that consultation very easily. It's open to anyone, be they members of the Teaching Hospitals Trust, general public, what have you. And I think it's important that people are aware of it and do put their comments on there, because of those 10 options, it's everything from doing nothing and leaving it to having one super hospital and everything in between. So until that process is whittled down to a smaller number, which is exactly what we did with our health, our care, and it took forever to get from 10 to, I don't think we had maybe 11 or something down to 3, and then the whole process fell apart because everything changed, as these things do. So the short answer is don't hold your breath. These decisions will take a long time. So it's out for consultation. It'll go back with the 3. Those 3 options will then go before Health Scrutiny Committee, LCC, and they'll also go again to public scrutiny and consultation. So it's a long, slow process. If you remember how long OHOC took, I think it was about 3 years, and we hadn't got to the end of it then. So...
Okay.
May I just ask a supplementary? To the best of your knowledge, have they acquired any funds for this building programme?
That's a good question, and I think it's there is some funding at the moment. The funding that was put in was to develop the business plan and the designs, so it was like early stages. But there will be money coming forward from NHS sources, and there is expected to be some money coming from Lancashire County Council as the also the overarching provider of social care and health input, you know. So it'll be a dual funded as far as I see it. But it'll be a long way yet before you get your answer on what it's going to look like.
Okay. Julia?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to go back to the question around how hospitals in Lancashire been coping. County councils are regularly receiving very thorough, detailed updates about all the emerging issues within Lancashire, and most of the information that's provided is I think we're actually actively encouraged to share with our district colleagues. And we've also been given quite a lot of bite-sized briefings on particular areas of interest where people have had greater concerns. So we just need to be more acquainted with your county councils perhaps to ascertain how things are doing. But it does lend itself really to be doing more joint work as far as communication. I would say it's always good to talk, always good to listen. I'd just like to raise an issue about the future of hospital provision, particularly the emergency provision within Lancashire. We've mentioned our health, our care. You know, we got sort of lined up for that, and actually we were invited to participate in a joint scrutiny group. We were asked by this health scrutiny steering group at one stage to be coming together, and it wasn't one a political decision who took part. We had quite a cross-party participation, but then that all got sacked. But what we got the ability to do in Chorley is that we did set up quite some time ago a joint scrutiny committee, which has never met. I think it was supposed to meet in 2019 and never did. And that lends itself, you know, if people are feeling a bit sort of detached from where we're at with the remodelling and sort of reinvestment or whatever people are trying to call hospital provision in Lancashire, it might be good to get round the table with, I think it was a joint group with Preston and South Ribble. Now, I don't think we're going to deal with matters on a parochial level, even if it is only 3 districts talking and listening together. I think we're mature, particularly in Chorley. We've got the ability to be looking at the overview of Lancashire, and I just think we'd really benefit. Like any deal that's been shaped in Lancashire, actually having some collaboration and discussion around emerging issues will enable us to come to some consensus. But at the moment, I think people feel really almost like alienated from it and just see, and they're quite critical and cynical about the whole process.
I agree entirely what you're saying. The thing was, we said this scrutiny came for South Ribble, Preston and Chorley, but it would appear constitutionally only counties can do scrutiny of health. That's what I was told. And there's not a great deal we can do. I was going to bring this up at Shared Services last year, and I think it's something we should look into more detail, Councillor Wilson, Shared Services, have a joint scrutiny committee for health with South Ribble and ourselves. And we have a hospital for Chorley and South Ribble, and really we should sometime be able to get the bosses of the commissioners, whatever you want to call them these days, to come and give us a talk on health and in Chorley and South Ribble. But I was told that they can only have counties running health scrutiny. That was us told. Yes, Kim.
I don't think a scrutiny committee at district level would have the powers to sort of call in decisions to the Secretary of State and stuff like that. But I think that there's nothing to stop the three authorities from working together and forming recommendations or views, putting them forward to the County Council's Health Scrutiny Committee or to the County Council. I suppose that would be up to here, wouldn't it? But I don't think they have like the official. I don't think you would have the official powers that the statutory Health Scrutiny Committee would have.
You might well be right, but it might be something we probably should look at even as an individual item at the scrutiny meeting to get the commissioners in from the hospital to give us a talk, or a member training session. I think we've had them before, haven't we, on the future of the health service, or what the reorganisation was going to be, all the thoughts about reorganisation as a member training thing, but it might well be to get them here at scrutiny. It's something we'll have to look at. Okay, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I know it only relates to Chorley indirectly, but was anything mentioned about the Nightingale Hospital at Preston? Because I know it's supposedly in the final stages of being built. Currently, Preston Hospital looks like a war zone, if you ask me, but it feels like the government might be wasting money there if there's not the demand for it. Why still press ahead with a vanity project? I'm not sure. Was it raised at health and at the scrutiny meeting?
Well, it might be something that Councillor France can raise with
Thanks, James.
at the next meeting, whenever they have them.
No, because back in November, these Nightingale beds weren't even in anybody's thoughts, or certainly not publicly. So, but I can tell you from the hospital governors meeting this afternoon, and this is not confidential information, that the buildings that you may have seen being assembled on the car parks at Royal Preston Hospital, they've had 3 weeks to get those ready. They've been working around the clock, and they're hoping to get 60 beds on the car park. They will be for non-COVID medical patients who basically they can't discharge because there's nowhere to discharge them to at the moment. Most of the care homes have policies of not taking any new admissions when they've got COVID cases in them. They can be closed to new admissions for a month at a time. So there's a real problem. You can't discharge people from hospital if there isn't somewhere to send them to, and you can't get people from A&E into a bed if that bed is being blocked by somebody who can't leave. So those hospital beds, I think there's about 60 intended to be on the car park. There are others at various places within the hospital itself, including the staff restaurant, which I have to say I think is a bad idea, because when you're working a 12-hour shift, I think a hot meal is pretty important, really. But that's another point. So overall, there's meant to be approximately 100 beds, and they're hoping to be able to admit to the 60-plus unit on the car park sometime next week.
Okay. Councillor Newell, all right? Okay, any further questions? Right, thank you, Councillor France. Thank you very much. If you want to depart, pleasure, and thank you very much. Okay, we move on to item 10, which is the draft budget 2023 and summary position over the medium term. Councillor Wilson, thank you for your attendance this evening.
Thank you, Chair, for inviting me, as always. Always delighted to come to scrutiny, and just thank James as well for attending, so he can answer all the difficult questions afterwards. I will. What I will do, Chair, is just give a brief overview, if I may, of the paper that we've gone out to consult on. Much to Councillor Boardman's angst, we do mention reduction in government funding over a number of years, but of course that's just a reality of the situation. That whether for the rights and wrongs of it, we can't get round the fact that if we look back to 2016, the funding that we had compared to now and then moving forward is reduced seriously. So that's the context. The rights and wrongs of that can be debated at another stage, but that's the context. On top of that, Chair, we have a number of challenges which come in the form of uncertainty. So one of the things we were hoping for this year is that we would get a 3-year settlement so that we'd know exactly where we stand in terms of finance moving into the medium term. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, so we get a 12 months notice. So things like business rates and the retention and what we get from that, we know what we're going to get for the next 12 months, but we don't know what's coming in the future. New homes bonus the same. So it makes it challenging. It makes setting the budget difficult in terms of knowing where you're going in the medium term. But of course, and it means you have to make some tough choices, because if we look at the graph on page 118 on this report, paragraph 29, you can see there that as a consequence of the income streams that we receive that are funding, as you can see there's just over 14 million for this year, 12 million, half for the 23 and 12.6 in 24. So in terms of the deficit that leaves us with, that's 2.2 million for this year, going up to 4 million the year after, and 4.3 in 2024. So what we have to do, Chair, is obviously bridge that gap, and probably consistent with our approach in previous years, we bridge that gap in a number of ways. The first is by efficiency savings, and it's worth noting the significant efficiency savings we've made over the last 6-7 years, which it details in the report. And then the further efficiencies that we can see on table 3, page 119, through shared services. So obviously through that we both councils in South Lancashire have had a financial gain. And then on top of that, on top of the efficiencies, we've got the income that comes into the council. So we've got the investment sites such as Market Walk, Primrose Retirement Home, Strawberry Fields and Logistics House. On there, of course, is the proposed figure for the increase in garden subscription as well. So the combination of efficiencies and income significantly reduces that deficit to 281,000 for this year and moving up to 1.9 and 2.2 million. And then, of course, we have the new investment sites, the Tatton Gardens, which is well underway, and also Whittle Health Hub. And when they do come on stream, you can see there on page 123 that we expect those investment sites to bring in an income of 134,335 and 335, and that then obviously helps plug the gap. And then the final way in which we plug that gap is the proposed increase in council tax of 1.99%. So council tax will increase, and it's worth noting there, Chair, that if the decision to take that obviously is based on the need to do it, to plug that gap, but also we need to be aware that the fair funding review is yet to be produced. I think this has been being kicked about for at least 4 years. I remember going to a meeting in London, I think in 2017 or 18, to discuss this exciting new way of local government funding. Well, 5 years down the track, we're still waiting. But what's worth noting, and it mentions it in the papers, is that when assessing what chore the council will be given and what monies we will receive through things like business rates and other streams, the government will assess our core spending power. And in assessing our core spending power, it will assume we increase council tax by 2% year on year. So it's just worth noting that if you don't increase it, you leave yourself a greater gap to make up. So it doesn't mean you have to increase it, absolutely, it's not law, but you have to be aware of the financial consequence of not doing. And that's an important point to note in terms of these papers. But where that does leave us with council tax, as you can see on page 124, is that for the average bandee, Chorley's still the second lowest in the county. So I think we still get a fair deal, as it were, for the residents, because we do invest money into the community on behalf of our residents and invest taxpayers' money, of course, as we discussed on Tuesday. And, you know, at the end of the day, yes, we are asking for a little contribution from residents. Never a decision to take lightly, but I think the value that it brings is significantly greater than the increase of something like 10p a week on the average taxpayer. What that allows us to do, Chair, is commit to our investment priorities. And if we just go back to page 122, we can see there the investment priorities for 2022-23. So we've got 1.5 million revenue investments and over £40 million in capital investments. The big capital schemes, those that I've already mentioned, such as Tatton, Strawberry Meadows, I'm not mentioning Strawberry Meadows, but Strawberry Meadows, Whittle Health Hub, and the accommodation improvements. You know, big schemes, obviously, that are designed to address the health needs of the community, designed to support jobs, and, you know, I think will make a big difference in those communities, particularly, I think, well, they all will, but I think Tatton in the East Ward of Chorley has been probably one of the worst served communities in terms of health provision for many, many years, so that plugs that big gap. In terms of the revenue investments, you can see there, I won't go through every one in detail, but we can see there that we've got a number of investments to be made, whether that's supporting the economy through the additional £200,000 to develop apprenticeship schemes, graduate and training posts. We've got monies to go into the climate fund, of course, which is a big priority for this council. We allocated £500,000. We've spent some of that, so we're effectively putting the £250,000 that we've spent back in. So that's an additional investment there. We're looking to support local communities and invest in play areas, maybe where the council don't own the assets, but where these assets are in need of support and help, particularly in rural communities. So that will go in as well. And we're also investing generally in terms of play facilities, community facilities. You can see there at the bottom, £2.7 million across the borough. It does mention there Milestone Meadows, 74,000 as one of the bigger schemes. In addition to monies for affordable housing and the money, of course, that we need to invest in our leisure centre since we took control of leisure centre at the start of the COVID pandemic. So I think that investment package, Chair, gives a broad overview of where we see residents' priorities, and we believe that this is, you know, having spoken with our residents, we believe this is where their money should be invested, and that's what we aim to do. In doing that, Chair, of course, we have to have one eye on the future, and if you go to page 126, you can see there the position in terms of reserves. So obviously with expenditure in investments always comes some potential risk, and you've also got to guard for the rainy day in the future. So you can see there the general fund reserve, which has been set at 4 million for the last 2-3 years. I seem to remember Councillor Bell itching to get it up to 4 million, and eventually we agreed. That goes up to 4.4 million this year. And then we can see the other specific reserves. So obviously for things such as the Market Walk, we've got the equalisation reserve, which of course is very handy because you have to again be ready for downturns like we've experienced with COVID. And we've got a variety of reserves there which total £1.2 million. So I think the budget provides an excellent balance between continuing to invest in the priorities that we believe residents want to see. It makes sure we balance the budget, which of course is important, and it gives us a pathway to balance the budget for the next 3 years. But it is an element of caution to it, let's say with the reserves that are put to one side to protect ourselves, as I say, for the rainy day, and overall delivers on people's needs. So I'm obviously pleased with what we've managed to put together, but obviously now we want to hear from residents, and that's why we've launched the consultation, which I believe closes next Friday, I think the 4th. So if people haven't done so or wish to do so, or if you're speaking to your residents, please encourage them to engage and let us know their thoughts. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any questions? Yes, Councillor Reid.
One area of council charges that I don't understand, and I still don't understand any further from attending the meetings or listening to Councillor Wilson just now, is special expenses. I don't see how it's represented in the table. Is that included in the council tax green band? I guess it is. But if a resident asked me how is that calculated, what is it spent on, I wouldn't be able to give them an answer. And I've asked around, and I believe a number of other people have expressed similar concerns. So is there, I don't know whether it's something you can explain now, or whether it's something we need to pick up in the future work plan and have an item on that would be helpful.
The principle, I remember, in fact, we were only discussing this earlier today, actually. I remember sitting in a meeting with a former finance officer of Chorley Council called George Graham, who came up with this wonderful scheme in 2001, I think it was, of special expenses. And it is a highly complicated sort of way of trying to, and this is the principle of it to answer your question, is what it tries to do is levy council taxpayers for the facilities that they get. So, for example, I can give my ward as an example. We've got 2 playing fields. So we've got King George's playing field and Jubilee. Obviously, if you are in a town centre ward, you haven't got those facilities. So you could argue, and this is what the argument goes, is you spend more money in Adlington in terms of maintaining the playing pitches because they get mowed every week and whatnot, and the change rooms have to be maintained, than you do in other areas. So it was a very, very convoluted way of trying to reflect what you pay, what services you get in your area, and that's reflected in this additional, in this sort of this charge. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. I don't think anyone makes any pretense of that whatsoever. There's only 2 ways of solving it. One is you scrap it all together and take a sort of £750,000 hit, or B, you just introduce a flat rate on everyone and say we should all pay into the pot and share it. So I'm not saying, or you come up with another very complicated scheme which tries to reflect how each community, what resources you spend in each community. So it's one of those that we get asked about it quite regularly. I think the principle of it, I think there's some merit in it because it tries to do it, it tries to attempt some fairness. I think the reality of it is just something that's very convoluted, very people don't understand.
Yeah, yes, Councillor Rick, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so to come back on that, so for example, if we're going to be parochial, I represent Buckshaw and Whittle, along with other councillors, where we pay special expenses, but Chorley Council has not even a square foot of land that it maintains in Buckshaw Village, so why would we pay special expenses?
You would pay special expenses, not just, I'm just trying to think that James might be able to help me out here. I said he would help me with a difficult question. You would have, depending on what, it's not just play areas, obviously, it's all council spaces. But what about, is the second community centre that we built? But we own that, so we have to maintain it. So you have got something that we have.
All the years before that was built.
Yeah. I don't know, you need to ask your colleagues because it was Conservative administration that it was administering it then before it was built. I agree. I don't disagree with you, Councillor Riggan. It's not in any way ideal. But James might be able to give you more details about the way it's applied specifically. But that's the general principle.
Just to say that council members...
sorry.
Do you want to...
Just on that, of course, the parish council raised money, precept, and so there's extra charges as well with the special expenses. It is a thing that should be looked at in more detail, I think, for the future. It might well be that we could probably discuss it here next year before the budget is set anyway. It's.
I'm like I say, I'm happy. I've always said it's a very peculiar way of doing it, and I don't believe ultimately it's 100% fair because I don't think it is. But we can all use examples of that because I can use examples in my own ward where we pay probably quite a significant portion in that, a lot more than a lot of other areas. Now we get 2 playing fields, but other than that, there's nothing. So what's more expensive, mowing the grass every week on the field or maintaining a community centre? You can go round and round in circles on it. I think, as I say, we're dealing with a historic problem. How we resolve it, but I'm more than happy to welcome any suggestions that we can all coalesce around and agree. That would be quite wonderful if we could do that.
I think the first step then, Chair, is to find an opportunity for us to try and understand how it works before we can even consider what the options are, which I think was my starting point, really. I wouldn't be able to explain to a resident, which I don't think is a great position for a council to be in.
I think, Jonathan, you wanted to say something, did you?
Oh, no, I don't have anything to add after.
All right. Yes.
I see that there is still a 900k COVID reserve. Is this being, looking forward, unduly pessimistic? Would we not be better thinking of spending this money and investing directly into the business sector?
Yeah, I think that's, to answer your question, I think it's rather than our decision to hold it, I think that's just what's left after we've distributed everything and spent everything to date, Terry. So it's a question of, yeah, you're right, it's there. My only question back to that is, are we certain that COVID isn't coming back and we don't have to have any more lockdowns and we don't need any money for any support? if we are, you're right, it's happy days, let's invest. But if we're not, then I think we might need to be just a little cautious.
Yes, yeah.
Just to say that we, part of that was COVID commitments that we carried forward from last year. So it would be things like investment in ICT to make sure that we could still communicate with residents and still do meetings like this remotely. And other things such as homelessness support, food banks, all the rest of it. Now, what happened is we received £1.6 million of unring-fenced grants last year, and we set aside a lot of that to deal with pressures this financial year. And then the government came along and gave us the COMP funding, which is to contain the Outbreak Management Fund. And a lot of the things that we thought we had to commit against this reserve all of a sudden fell under this COMP funding, this additional funding, which is ring fence for COVID-related things. So a lot of that reserve we set aside for things which are now funded by a different fund, but yet we will look to invest this remaining fund. And it is up to the council exactly what they want to do with it. It doesn't have to be COVID-related. It's an unring-fenced fund, really. So that reserve is there, ready for investment. And it will fund, I think, some of the things that are outlined in this report, such as support for businesses and other things, really. So.
Okay, Councillor Hull. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor Wilson for presenting such a balanced budget. I think it's testament to the robust administration that we have in Chorley, that, you know, get to page 123.40, looking at an initial deficit of £281,000. Some of the ideas we've had from the opposition over the last few years, I think we can be thankful it's so low. And some of the anathema we've seen from the opposition in relation to investments, I think we can be thankful that nearly half of that deficit will be covered by money that will be coming in via investments. So I think we can be thankful that we're in a position to be looking at a 1.99% tax rate rather than a 5% increase, which we might have done otherwise. Nevertheless, as you said, any tax increase can't be taken lightly. Many residents are concerned about the devil in the detail. Prices for everything are increasing, including the operating costs of this council, given the current fuel prices, gas prices we're seeing in this country. Nevertheless, I think we could do with a bit of better information in terms of where it comes to the actual prices. So moving over the page to 124, paragraph, you know, the table there at point 43, just what kind of increase this looks like now. I don't hold my degree in economics or mathematics, but I think on a Band D equivalent, looking more at an increase of about £4.50 a month, which of course is a bit more than 10p a week, but you'll be able to correct me on that anyway, based on what it was last year. But I might be looking at the wrong figures. But also it might be helpful if we could have the information about the other bands, because it's all right us talking to members of the public that are in a Band D property, but how about people in the private rented sector might be more likely to be a Band C property. That kind of information might be more useful, but again, credit to the council for keeping tax so low. Just for point of reference, in 2020 we were the third lowest in the county, we're now the second. So the fact is we're managing to keep taxes low, but still it's a tax increase. We could do with a bit more contextual information. Thanks.
On the issue of the Band D and the other bands, we can supply the information of each band. I mean, that's straightforward. It's the way, normally it's just, that's the reference point is the average, and the average is the Band D in terms of between all the bands. That's why you always provide that. But you're absolutely right, of course. And of course, those who are on the lower bands, or even you're on the higher band, if you are struggling, of course, we have assistance in place for those hardship schemes as well. So that's also worth referencing. I'm just looking at James now because I thought about 10p a week on a Band D. So you told me you've got your calculator out.
Yeah, so the figures in there is for the annual cost, isn't it? £195.76. So 2% on that divided by 52 is looking at about 8p a week, I think is what we usually report. Just in terms of putting the other bands in, we don't get figures from our other preceptors, including parishes, until really late on in January, very early in February. So we could put information in the draft report going forward, which would give you a breakdown of the current charges, but we can't put in the draft budget what LCC are going to propose because they won't have approved it yet, what the parish is going to propose. So that's what makes it quite difficult for the draft budget in January, as opposed to the final budget where we will have all those figures, and we do put that in Appendix A to the report, which breaks down not just the different bands, but also the different impacts on different parishes, because obviously the parishes will also give us their information in terms of what they've either decided to increase, decrease, or keep the same. So I hope that explains why we can't do it in the draft budget, but I'm happy to provide that information to any member that's asked for it in terms of the breakdown across the different parishes and different bands as well.
Okay, okay with that? Yeah, can I just ask a couple of questions? Strawberry Fields, this is on page 117, its net surplus will be realised from 23-24. It seems a long time away to start getting some revenue back from Strawberry Fields.
Quite simply, I mean, COVID obviously completely took the wind out of the sails with that. We were in a position where we were beginning to fill it. And then obviously once that broke, everyone pulled out, or people who were going to take a unit stopped taking the units. And you're absolutely right, John, because of course what you've got now is everyone on home working, and they're not even now, even though we've lifted the restrictions, they're not necessarily coming back, but we have got now a number of new tenants coming in, and therefore those figures are what we think where we'll be. So you're right, it's disappointing, it's slowed down, but ultimately I think there was nothing we could do about it.
Okay, thank you.
Just to say, I believe that all the offices now are occupied at Strawberry Fields, so what we're looking to do is change the interior. So part of the bid to the ERDF was that we'd have these pods and these seats where people just come in for the day and work. Now, of course, with COVID, people have set themselves up at home now, and that's one of the reasons why the demand's dropped for that, and that's the reason why it's not generating as much income. But we are now looking to, and I think we've agreed with the ERDF to actually change some of the internals to make more office space, which is in demand. And like I said, we've already, I believe, agreed all the rentals on the current office space there. So it's not, they're still prudent assumptions, and we hope to actually generate more income. We just won't tell the RDF, of course.
Okay, thank you. Can I just go back to investment sites, which is on page 124. The new Whittle surgery is due to open in February, and that is supposed to raise, and the other two investment sites, only going to raise 134,000 this next year. It seems a small amount of money. As a rental or leases being arranged especially on Whittle surgery.
There was a paper about that was going to come to cabinet, and then it got taken away, so it should be coming back very soon, Chair. Unless again, I don't know I've not seen a revised draft of that, so I can't tell you what the rent is at the minute because I haven't seen a revised draft.
I mean, is that discussed with not only the doctors but with NHS as well? Do they get involved with all that?
Yeah, exactly that. So there was issues around the length of the lease and the break clauses in it and so on. So they were still open for negotiation last time I was informed.
No doubt you will inform us when you.
As soon as we know, we'll be bringing it through to get signed off and get it in the get it bagged, as it were. So we'll not hang around. Yeah.
Gary Hall reckons it's going to be the most expensive doctor surgery in the country, isn't it?
It might be, but hopefully it'll be the best as well, Joe.
Yes, very good. Right, on that site, Clayton have built their third village hall. Does that include the rental figure here that we're going to get from the village hall?
I'm not sure it does actually. I think that's just what we anticipate from the GP surgery.
We know it.
No, we're clear that at the moment for next year it would be GP surgery and Strawberry Meadows part year effect, which is why it's lower, and then it generates more income. So.
But Clayton, with their buildings being built, they're supposed to pay the council some rent as well.
I'd have to check the model, but yes, you're right. I've seen that some of that funding will be in. It will make a small part of the Whittle surgery's income. But yeah,
I know we've got a big amount, but it's still there, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it is.
I hope we're not going to give it free to Clayton. They've already got 2 or 3.
Signed that one, I'm sure. Actually, I think we've already agreed that, haven't we?
Okay, I think I've just one more. The leisure centre, is that going to be a costly affair? Do you think it's going to get it? Going to get the finances fairly straight over the next year?
Well, if you remember when we first took it over, we put in quite a significant budget of about £600,000, and of course we'd only spent about half of it in that period. So it's not been as expensive as we thought. The plan and what's the word? Or the plan is that it will start breaking even, and then we might actually one day make some money out of it. That's the plan, because we've had to do a hell of a lot of reorganising. We've had to renegotiate staff contracts. We've had to reorganise the way the whole place works, and it's taken a lot of time, and it's been difficult, as you can imagine, during the lockdowns and restrictions. But the money that's in the budget there, the 2 million, of course, that's just investing in the asset, as it were. So that's keeping our building, fit for purpose, which we'd have had to do anyway in all reality. So, or we'd have had to do some of it anyway. So I'm, quite reasonably confident that the leisure centre won't be a drain on our resource over the medium to long term. I think we'll end up start making money from it.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Berry.
Could I just have a question about, on page 125, about the review of the council's portfolio of assets? It just mentions potential opportunities of sale or redevelopment. I'm quite interested in whether we proactively look at opportunities to buy. And is that a thing, or is that do we dedicate any time to enhance our portfolio?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, in terms of, it depends what we're using it for, doesn't it? So, in the sense that we bought the TVS building for an obvious purpose, is to sit on that and obviously make some revenue from from it, which we do, which is one of the reasons why we can balance the budget. So, do we always continue to look at assets potentially to set, that we can purchase? Yes. Obviously, we wouldn't turn down an opportunity. In terms of our own assets, obviously, we need to also look at what we own now in terms of our buildings, where our staff are located, how much room we need for our staff. As we said, working from home to an extent, not saying it's the norm for everyone, but is here and here to stay. We're already going down that path before COVID. It just put the foot on the accelerator by 100. And therefore, you've got to review your assets and see what you actually need. I mean, this building is a wonderful town hall, but there's a hell of a lot of wasted space in it. And you need to look at that and whether you can redesign, some significant investments. For example, and I'm not, no specifics, but we have certain assets, perhaps like Union Street, that may be valuable because they're in the right location. So you've got to look at that potentially. It may come to nothing. You may write it off and say, no, we need it. But you've got to look at your portfolio in that way, and that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Very good. I think we'll look forward to the Budget Council meeting in February. I'm certain the Conservative Group will have quite a few questions to ask. And
always my highlight. Yeah.
Look forward to the debate. Thank you for attending tonight, Councillor Wilson. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, which is the Community Safety Partnership report. Can I welcome Chris Abbott and Gary Crowe? I think they're about somewhere, and I think Irene Elworth. I don't think we've met before, but welcome to the council and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee. You're going to present talk about the safety partnerships.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Irene Elwell. I'm the Public Protection Team Leader for Chorley Council, and we do have Chief Inspector Chris Abbott on the call as well, and he is more than happy to take some questions after I've presented the report. So I've just been asked to give an update on the Community Safety Partnership. So a bit of background. In July 2020, a report was provided to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in relation to crime and disorder. This set out that Chorley Council was fulfilling their obligations under Section 5 Crime and Disorder Act 1998 through actively engaging with the established Community Safety Partnership and implementing required actions and interventions concerning crime and disorder within the partnership area. As you may already be aware, Chorley and South Ribble have worked collaboratively with their community safety partnerships. This has proven over the years to allow effective communication, sharing skills, knowledge and project opportunities. It also allows us to work very well with our partnerships because a lot of the other partnerships work over the two areas too. The successful partnership is dependent on the collaborative working with all the responsible authorities, Lancashire County Council, and also a lot of the partnerships with the registered social landlords, drug and alcohol services, Citizens Advice Bureau, and our voluntary community faith sectors. The current position, obviously, over the past 2 years has been extraordinary because of the COVID pandemic. The implications have led to resources being diverted to provide resilience in the COVID response, resulting in dynamic deviation, often at very short notice. Despite this, the strong and cohesive working relationship of the CSP and wider agencies has enabled an effective response to the community issues during this challenging time. Meetings have recommenced through the past 12 months and specific work has continued, albeit at a different pace. Partnership work concentrating on priorities such as knife crime, antisocial behaviour and prevent have all been completed during this period. So the Trolling Saffrable CSP is due a new 3-year action plan, which will be developed by the partnership following the publishing of the Lancashire Strategic Assessment. At the time of me writing the report, it hadn't been published, but in the past 2 days I have received it. So this will be a priority for us. The strategic assessment highlights significant crime and antisocial behaviour threats and issues that impact on community safety. It reports the key risks and threats impacting on the county, so we get a Lancashire one, but then we get it drilled down for Trolling Saffrable for our own profiles as well. So we will use that as part of towards our 3-year plan. The Serious and Violent Crime Bill, this has been delayed and due to become law approximately mid this year. This will impose a duty on district councils and other statutory agencies to understand their local issues, prepare and implement a strategy. The Lancashire Violent Reduction Network are offering leadership and strategic coordination, working with the CSPs directly in their local response to serious violence. Serious violence crime will be a large part of our action plan. The Lancashire Community Safety Partnership Board commissioned a review of existing partnership and governance arrangements. The review had a focus on community safety, safeguarding and health and wellbeing. The conclusion of the review provided the option of a thematic model and a geographic model. The view of both Trolling and Saffrable was to remain with a thematic model. However, the county has suggested a geographic model. Indications from county level community safety meetings are that no CSP will be forced down the geographic route for their meetings, and following discussions with Preston, they aren't wanting to combine. Therefore, Trolling Saffrable will continue with a thematic model, whilst some of the changes from above kind of happen, and we will see what kind of happens with that. Trolling Saffrable are making some of their own changes to strengthen the partnership that we already have. Some of the changes that are going to happen and they're happening at the moment is the Responsible Authorities Group, which we call the RAG, will re-establish and meet twice a year. This group is the strategic level of the CSP and attended by management from the responsible authorities, members and other partners. The group is to be the link between the Lancashire Community Safety Partnership Board and the working group of the CSP. It's been agreed that a Trolling Saffrable conference will be held once a year with invitations to key agencies and councillors. These are intended as a celebratory event of the work of the previous 12 months and an opportunity to plan and take on board what the views of the communities are. There will be a monthly priorities meeting. At the moment, these are quarterly, and we have proposed to have these more on a monthly basis. A monthly police analyst report will be produced with local priorities, which will form part of the agenda and actions. Our first one of this is taking place next week. And one of the first priorities will be our action plan. Jenga, which is our area for serious and organised crime, is to be added to the agenda to discuss referrals and actions. It has been evidenced via other CSPs that collaborating Jenga and community safety is effective in relation to information sharing via the same partners who attend the same meetings. There will be fixed items on the agenda, including but not limited to prevent, safeguarding and serious violent crime. This will allow for these topics to be discussed in more detail with the wider group. By refreshing the Chorley and South Ribble CSP to set up the setup and the management, it will allow this partnership to re-establish strong governance arrangements, functionality, membership and efficiency of the work completed by the CSPs.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions for either the Inspector or Irene? Yes, Julia.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. What concerns me is that you make reference to the last time something came to scrutiny in July 2020. But in fact, that was just a summary. We didn't really have a sort of detailed report that I don't think we've seen since 2019. Although I'm really pleased a bit that I've just Googled the strategic assessment local profile, and that's very accessible, but we just haven't got the detail. And so there's really not, it's good that you've got a good overview, but it's the detail that really should be coming to scrutiny. And I don't know whether our director, Jennifer Mullin, perhaps be able to provide us with that sort of background, or yourselves at some stage. And obviously, if you have
of course. Yeah. Sorry. I was asked to just do an update, so but I'm more than happy to provide that if that is actually what is necessary.
Thank you. It's particularly the data. I'm particularly concerned about violence towards women and girls, and obviously it's quite a topical issue at the moment, and it's just having that reference point, being able to access the data along lines, and obviously annually you're setting priorities, but the only one I could access was from 2009. So did those change in the last 2 years? Were services really just focused on the COVID response? Back in 2019, there was 3 to do with antisocial behaviour, serious and organised crime and vulnerabilities. Are those still the priorities, or has that changed?
They are still part of the priorities. Obviously, some of them will have changed with the new strategic assessment, so we will be looking at that. Unfortunately, obviously, COVID did take over in terms of a lot of the actions, but it was more of a reactive over the past 18 months, 2 years, unfortunately, and we have tried to kind of concentrate on the things that have come up at the time so that we're able to concentrate on something. But yeah, COVID did kind of take over that action plan at the time.
If that's okay, and then I'm obviously stand down. Thank you. I'm interested. There's obviously no mention in the summary really about the Police and Crime Commissioner and the grants that were available, and whether we've been able to access them, and where were they focused within Chorley and South Ribble is of interest.
So with the Police and Crime Commissioner, we have been able to access some funding. It's not been as much as in previous years, but I think I did mention around like the knife crime and the antisocial behaviour. We have accessed stuff in relation to that. So one particular piece of work that we accessed it through for the knife crime was I don't know whether you've heard of it, the JJ effect, which was actually taken around more recently into the Chorley and South Ribble high schools, a very amazing piece of work by a young man from Preston who's actually going all over the country now. And we were able to work with the police and ourselves to get that money. And it has been all, I think it was year 8s or year 9s that actually received that.
Great, thanks very much. It is a fantastic project. And well done to that chap. He's done a really good job, hasn't he?
He has.
Have you got anything to say about what's going on in the area?
Is that for Chief Inspector?
Inspector, can you just give
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello.
Sorry, I can hear you now. You dropped out then. Apologies. There's an awful lot going on, to be honest with you, and there's been quite a bit of change recently, certainly in our structure regarding the focus that we're paying on local policing and the investment that we're now getting from the PCC as part of his crime plan. It's putting local policing, tackling antisocial behaviour, vehicle nuisance right at the top there in his top 5 priorities. So surely at the minute, we're absolutely committed to reducing ASB in the town centre. We're working with a number of partners, and Irene and team doing a fantastic job in supporting us. We've got weekly meetings where we work together to review reports of the ASB we're getting in Chorley so that we can get an appropriate response. There's plenty going on regarding how we're dealing with some of these offenders, the use of civil orders, criminal prosecutions where we can, and we are starting to now see that reduction. We've had an analytical product done actually recently, which shows that all the hotspots and the issues that we've got around Chorley so that we can have an appropriate response to it. We've also, when we talk about knife crime, there's the surge funding, which is still there, and we do have we call it Operation Edge. So that is a totally separate pot of money, which is there to focus on knife crime and violence reduction. Those officers are now out and about across the area on a regular basis, and they are solely dealing with that. I know a member just spoke as well about violence against women. So big topic in the press recently, certainly with all the reports of spiking and a lot of the offences there against people who are vulnerable out on nights out, etc. We have led actually in this area on an operation which has received some money directly from the PCC, which has now turned into a Lancashire initiative, which is called Operation Night Guardian, which has now put plainclothes officers inside licensed premises, working with first aiders, etc., so that we can have a really robust and quick, rapid response to any reports of spiking. Big piece of work going on now, which has shown a lot of the reports have actually tailed off significantly since the media hysteria, if you will. But actually, there is a real risk out there. So we carry on being committed to that, helping people, having extra officers out around educational establishments, etc., that might offer that student union or the pubs and the clubs, etc., that need that extra high visible policing. We've got extra officers out and about around Chorley using a tool called Lancashire Talking, which you may have heard of before. Well, that is being pushed even further now, targeting areas of the community where we may not have been as visible previously, so that we can listen to concerns and issues that are being raised, maybe things that generally haven't been raised before, or by people who can't contact people so that we're alerted to these things. So we've got direct communication now with extra people in the community, if you will, so that we can really focus our patrols into the hotspots where they're needed. So plenty going on, and I'm happy to report that we are starting to see quite a reduction in reports of crime, ASB around Chorley, and thankfully reports of violence and spiking, etc. It is reducing, so it's all going in the right direction. It's quite a positive story at the minute.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Joe.
Thanks. Interesting to hear that reduction of ASBOs. That's not what we're hearing when we're going out on the doorstep and talking to people. It's quite the reverse. At Councillor for Adlington Anderton area, we suffer a lot, not in the town centre, you see. So what we're doing for these outlying districts, we suffer in Adlington and Anderton from a lot of cross-border crimes. People come in from Greater Manchester area, youths come in and things like that, and there's a lot of car crime at the moment, a lot of ASBOs, reports of drug dealing going on. And the worrying part about the drug dealing that's going on is the vans appear just when the kids are coming home from school. And those times, and they've had that intelligence, and there doesn't seem to be, people have reported it, and there doesn't seem to be anything positive that we can tell the people. You know, it's, as I say, it's interesting, but we're getting a different picture from the people on the doorstep. Your thoughts, please.
Inspector, any comment to make about that?
Yeah, definitely. You make absolute valid points. We have started to pick up, and we've known about it more recently as more and more people have started or have got the confidence to report it to us. We've initially had a significant lack of reporting, and it's actually our open source work, looking at the comments on social media, third-party reports, which has really switched us onto this. So just if I could break down some things just apart, the burglaries, vehicle crime, absolute priority at the minute, and we are doing an operation with Greater Manchester because of the amount of crime over in Bolton over the border is significant at the minute, and we are trying to put, if you will, a ring of steel around our area to stop those criminals coming into Adlington and that surrounding area. Last week, we went over and made 3 arrests of 3 of the main nominals who were responsible for much of this crime, the burglaries and the car crime, over in Bolton and Horwich. There was 56 burglaries, I think, in 1 week in the Bolton area, and these 3 individuals had started to come over to Adlington to commit some of this crime. So we've taken positive action and we've arrested them, and they are currently on bail whilst pending further inquiries. What that has allowed us to do, it's allowed us, or me, to go to our tasking meetings to raise Adlington as a priority area so that we can get more visible cops in the area, whether that's our TACOPS patrols, which are the traffic vehicles, the ARVs, which are in the 4x4s, and the neighbourhood officers and the response officers are all tasked to that area now. So there is work ongoing. There's also other work ongoing, which I can't tell you about, and they may be the officers that you can't see. Well, there's a reason for that, so that they can build that intelligence picture. So we are aware of the burglary issue, and I can assure you all that is an absolute priority of us at the minute, and that has got support from headquarters, from the senior officer team, so that we can get the right resources in the right places to hopefully put a stop to it. Regarding the ASB, again, we are working with the early intervention team, who are now starting to identify the youths responsible. I've personally overseen an inquiry regarding a nasty assault that happened on New Year's Day. I've been in touch with the gentleman who was assaulted, and we have made 2 arrests for that, and we've identified a 3rd person which we're going to take action against. That's just one example, isn't it? But actually, the early intervention team are now starting to do work with the schools, linking in with their colleagues over in the GMP area, because many of these individuals go to school across the border as well. So there's a lot of joint working going on to identify them, to put civil orders on them wherever we can, and then to take whatever positive action we can. But we will keep liaising with people and linking in with the community to learn more about what's going on. I'm sorry, I can't hear any of that. There's nothing coming through. No.
No.
Oh, got you now. Yeah.
We've had this issue before. Thank you for the information, but it would be good to get out to the people there, you know, some of the things that have been successful. You know, it would reassure them, because they have this feeling that things are
Yeah, I did get a bit of that. Absolutely. We will get out there and we will start holding some meetings, which actually will be a lot easier now we're coming out of this side of COVID. So definitely, I'll take that on board and pass it on to the team. Sorry, it's like a Dalek.
I know I've got my hands up, John. If you can hear me, we can't hear absolutely anything from here onwards. Just hold your hand up if you can hear me. John Walker, councillor. Thank you. We have absolutely nothing.
Right. Well, I mean, questions to ask because we've had a good briefing from.
Can I just say something? I wanted to congratulate the local Facebook pages, humour and constantly keeps up. And I would recommend you see that on particularly on Twitter and Facebook. They're very, very quick at turning things around, and it's with such pride that they've, I certainly feel that they're getting the job done in difficult circumstances. And long may that continue. So I think they're doing a thoroughly good job.
Thank you for that. Inspector, if you heard that comment, can you respond?
I only got the very last bit of that. Is that regarding our Facebook and social media?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really do appreciate that because it's one of the areas that I've certainly focused on with the team because I think it is really important to update the community on the work that we do, but it's also equally important to have that two-way engagement with people as well. So the team are proud when they have that success or the result, and I think it is right to share the information. But equally, I would really just plead with everyone to pass us any information or carry on with that engagement on those social media posts because it is something which we do read, and I do encourage the officers in the area to review the comments and hopefully then together we can just work towards those issues, can't we?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes, Kim.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Along similar lines, sort of social media-wise, I see quite a lot on Facebook and Twitter and stuff from the police around the rural task force. I think it's been brought in with the new Police and Crime Commissioner. I represent quite a rural area on the periphery of Chorley, Anglesark, Heapy, Rivington area, and a lot of the time that we spend on the doorstep talking to farmers and stuff, they don't really see any, they get quite despondent and stuff, and they don't really feel that they have any opportunity to influence how those priorities are sort of driven by in terms of the police. And I know a lot of the posts that we see on social media do tend to be more like Ribble Valley, Ormskirk, that we don't seem to see that rural task force presence in Chorley. I mean, it might be happening. I just wondered if you could give us any insight or how people can feed into that. It may be because nobody's reporting it. They might be, that could be why. Thank you.
Any comments, Inspector?
No, thank you. So the Rural Task Force, you're right, was set up last September. It currently has 4 officers. And I have to say, I'm really proud of them. They are the most productive 4 officers in any rural task force in the rest of the country. They've just recently won an award for the amount of stolen vehicles that they've recovered. They've actually recovered more stolen plant and farming equipment since they set up in September than any other police force in the country. And I'm talking about 4 officers here against the rest of the police forces in the country. So we're very privileged in this division, and I'll call it South Division, that services Preston, Chorley, South Ribble and West Lancashire, have one task force, which is the Rural Task Force. There has been a recent uplift where they've now gained a sergeant, so it is now a sergeant and 4 officers. They're based out of Ormskirk, right in the middle of the community, the rural community up there. However, their brief is to service the whole of South Division. Now, most of the demand at the minute that they have been dealing with has been the rural communities around Ormskirk and West Lancashire. However, they are now starting to feed through Chorley, Anglesart, Rivington and that way. And we have, as an organisation, accepted that we've not engaged with the rural community previously, as well as we should have done. So this Rural Task Force is here to change that, to engage with people. That there is a tendency, I think, with the rural community that a lot of farmers would use WhatsApp or set up WhatsApp groups to communicate, whereas our Rural Task Force can't do that. So they are very much encouraged to hold weekly meetings at the farmers markets and wherever they can to try and capture as much engagement as they can with all the different farms, to set everyone up on Lancashire Talking so that they've then got direct lines of communication with them. So I think we worked it out. There was over 3,000 farmers that they had to visit. So bear with them. They will be with you as soon as possible, but I will certainly feed it back and ask them to start paying more attention over on the Chorley side.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I've just got one question myself. We're new crime commissioner. Have you had much conversation with him, or has he been to Chorley to see you?
Absolutely. I've had more conversations with Mr. Snowden than I think I have with my own line manager recently. Really, really committed. And you know what? I am really impressed with the commitment and the passion that he has to work with the communities right across Lancashire. But the amount of time that he's afforded us over in Chorley in this area, the interest that he's shown on the work that we're doing and with the Rural Task Force, I have to say I am very impressed. So for that, if I say we're going to keep doing what we do and working with the PCC, and that I am sure will continue with the investments and the attention that he's paying for us so that we can improve the service that we deliver, I'm sure.
Great stuff, thanks for that. Any further questions? Well, just one thing. You mentioned the meeting between South Ribble and Chorley, the community partnership. When is the next meeting? Is there a date?
We have weekly meetings, which are our local tasking meetings, and we then have the monthly officer working group meetings. So we have a meeting every Tuesday, and then it is the first Thursday in every month.
I was asking really the joint meeting we have between South Ribble councillors and Chorley councillors. Do we know when that next meeting is?
With the councillors, did you say?
Usually a joint meeting changes 1 year in South Ribble, 1 year in the Lancastrian.
Oh, do you mean the conference?
Well, if it's a conference or the annual meeting or whatever it is, I'm just asking, do we know when it is?
We haven't set a date yet, but it will be on the next lot of agendas for the meetings.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So, yes. Yeah, quick.
Thanks. Can I just ask you a question, Irene, around public protection? Is there, within our council, is there joint working as far as trying to improve the safety of some of our most vulnerable residents in that, you know, the like social subscribing team? Are they equipped to be able to share information about, you know, particularly about reporting? Because we have in quite a lot of our parishes, particularly, there are a lot of people that experience antisocial behaviour but aren't necessarily feeling confident to report. And sometimes it's access to the local PCSO's mobile number, which I know you can get on in the no cards. But just if they had something like a simple card where they knew, you know, they can get to safety or they can contact someone, would be really, really beneficial. I just wondered, do you have any good examples of where that's happening? Do you think that different units within our council are actually thinking of safety when they're out on the doorstep talking with residents?
I do. Obviously, myself or Rachel, our other public protection officer, we sit on pivot as well. So that obviously is for the vulnerable families and adults. So we utilise that forum as well as having the connection with the Community Safety Partnership. Obviously, things like that are great examples, Councillor Berry, so we welcome anything in terms of that. So that is something that we could look at through the Community Safety Partnership and utilising some of the funding that we've got. So even them, that a suggestion of that is worthy of us of looking at it, and I think it's definitely something that we can look at.
Okay.
And we welcome the suggestions from councillors as well, and obviously we've talked about things otherwise like before as well.
Good. Well, thank you very much indeed. Can I just make one request that possibly over the next few weeks, once you've had your meetings, get some information to councillors about how many, stolen cars there's been, how many burglars, etc. If that data is available, I'm certain all council would, I wouldn't say enjoy reading them, but give us some information what's going on in the area. Is that all?
I'm more than happy, taking on board what Councillor Berry said before, I'm more than happy to come back in later on in the year and provide a full overview of the Community Safety Partnership, but also include the new action plan. And I'm sure our police analyst will be happy to provide an updated report at that time as well.
Much indeed. Inspector Abbott, thank you very much for your time. We've kept you out of work all around the area for the last 2 hours, so thank you for your patience here tonight, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to Irene again. I think you're doing the magistrates and transport.
Yes,
a brief overview.
Yeah, so Jennifer Mullin asked me to just provide a verbal update. She's provided me with some information as she'd been asked to look into. There were some concerns regarding people struggling to attend the magistrate courts. So she does advise me that she had looked into it. It's not something that the council has had an involvement with, and she's spoken to a number of people around the council, including legal and housing, and they weren't involved in the decisions. She has found some documentation regarding the original court closure, and she mentions a passage within it that states, having given careful consideration to all the responses received, the Lord Chancellor has decided to close Chorley Magistrates and Fleetwood Magistrates courts. We have considered the impact on court users in Lancashire, whilst we recognise that some users will have to travel further to attend court than they would were the courts to remain open. Other users will benefit from travelling less distance to the receiving courts. I am confident that access to justice will be maintained. Part of the consultation looked at the distance between Chorley and Preston. Listings of cases depends on the type of the case and availability where a case may proceed, though often, if asked, a closer court could be considered when listings matters. It is a genuine concern as justice should be accessible and speedy, and distance can be an issue. However, it is not normal to travel long distances to court, as it can also relate to the area in which an offence is committed. For example, for motoring offences, if you are caught speeding in Lancashire but live in Devon, if you are required to attend court, then you would be expected to attend a Lancashire magistrates, as that is where the offence originates. So the courts may see people who have travelled some distance to be there. Upon speaking to the courts, mechanisms are in place for court witnesses, and the CPS will fund transport costs to the courts. Defence witnesses are also supported, and the court ushers will issue claim forms and support applications. The council does fund Central Lancs Dial-A-Ride to provide community transport to the residents of Chorley. They provide safe and accessible transport to people who don't use regular public transport for a variety of reasons. They've continued during the pandemic and supported the most vulnerable in our community, which can include transport to court if necessary. The group transports on average 1,500 people in each quarter. She has said if you would like further research into this, she will be able to speak with the Chorley Magistrates Association if needed.
Thank you for that. Questions? Yes.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a couple of points on this, really. I mean, my sector, I do work in criminal defence. I'm a legal secretary. The concern is that when the court are fixing trials, they're not fixing them for the local court, which would be Preston. They're looking at places like Lancaster and Burnley, where it's not accessible for Chorley residents. There's no direct link there. And just with the Dial-A-Ride as well, people do have to pay for that service as well. It's not free. And it tends to be more for a member of my family used to use that, and it tends to be more for elderly residents to go to do the shopping. Really, it's not really a service that's been seen to go to magistrates court and things. And just in terms with the motoring as well, there is that flexibility as well. But and if you got somebody who lives in Devon but they committed offence in Lancashire, they can actually move that case down to a local court in Devon to assist. Thank you.
Any comments, Irene?
I can take them comments back to Jennifer, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I would just be keen just for it to be looked into further as well, maybe.
Yeah, and she has said that she's more than happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any questions for Irene? On just one thing. It's probably a silly question to ask. I assume the people from Chorley, the criminals, have got to go to the magistrates' court. It's mainly to Preston, is it, where they go, or is it a question where the various magistrates' courts are sitting?
Like the councillor just said, they are being listed elsewhere, so it's not necessarily to the closest by the sounds of it.
Sarah?
Sorry, just come back on that. It's the transport links that are the main issue. A lot of people, especially who do commit the offences, they're funded by legal aid, so the claiming benefits, it's not as easy. It's easy really to be listed them at a local court instead of listing elsewhere where there's no direct transport links to them courts.
Sounds a bit tricky for people, really. Any further questions?
I'd just like to say I'm quite sceptical that community transport is actually being accessed by
well, it would appear
going to court. Is there any evidence of that?
It would appear it isn't being accessed. That is, if that's the problem, if people can't access it, then it is a problem, isn't it? Yes.
Well, I'd agree with Councillor Berry on that one, because I mean, working with the friendship group in Adlington, which is kind of a pensioners group, we are very difficult. We're lucky. We're frightened to death of losing Dial-A-Ride, you know, and we're lucky to have it, and yet the courts seem to be getting it. So there's an issue there. I think we need.
Yes, Kim.
So we had a presentation. It is quite concerning that they've signposted people to Dial-A-Ride for going to court. I mean, we had a presentation from the woman that runs Dial-A-Ride for the Sustainable Transport Task Group, and that was only, last autumn, summer maybe, and she was basically saying that their priority was the minibuses, and that the community car scheme, which is the one volunteer driver picking up the passenger or the multiple passengers, that basically it was minimally operating, and it has minimally operated for a long time because they've never had the resource to put into finding additional volunteers, and they've tried various pushes in different parts of Chorley. So if we're signposting somebody to something like that, it's a bit, does bother me, because it's it doesn't exist really. It's you know, the trips to shopping and the, you know, into the community groups and things like that, that's their focus, and they will tell you that's their focus, not for the actual single trips. Yeah, it does bother me, that. Thank you.
Is it something you can pressurise Jennifer to look into it in more detail?
Certainly, I will do. I've taken note of everyone's notes, so we'll feed back to her.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Well, can I thank you this evening, Irene, for presenting those two items. Sorry it's taken so long. We're never usually so late finishing. We haven't finished yet, but thank you for your patience anyway. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Item 13. June, I think this is you. You're going to give us an update on Select Move.
Unlucky for some. Quite short, really. We've had a couple of meetings so far. We've scoped the document. We've asked for responses from councillors, local councillors, and we've collated those. Thanks to Sarah for chairing that meeting, seeing as I was at home that night. But Sarah did it very well, night absence, so I've no worries if I can't make a meeting. Sarah will do it. Sarah and myself have met moving forward and had a discussion about who we want to talk to. And we're hoping to get a questionnaire out to Select Move people and doing some phoning as well to ask them their opinions for harder to reach people, perhaps. We want to speak to the relevant portfolio holders at Preston and South Ribble to see if they have similar issues to us with the Select Move, or whether it's a Chorley issue. So we don't know. Basically, and speak to landlords as well. So that's what we're hoping to do. And at our next meeting, we want to think about some questions that we want to ask those people. That's how we'll be moving it forward. I think I've covered everything there quite swiftly.
So do you hope to get this complete before the end of this municipal year?
Who knows? It depends what answers we get and how quick people are to answer us, really, what the responses are. So we're doing our best.
Very good. Yes, I'm not pushing you. Just asking you to see whether it will be complete before the end of this municipal year.
Well, hopefully we'll have somebody in post who's the Select Move coordinator before the end of the process. And we might be able to pass some things on to them. So we shall see.
Your report would have to come here and then go to...
Oh, yeah, I know that, but I don't know whether it'll be done in time for me or not. We shall see.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Lovely, thank you. So we'll go on to the last item, which is the work programme. I mean, it's the last meeting of the year. Is there anything specific that you feel as though we should be looking at? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from earlier, could we have special expenses on the agenda, on the programme at some point? I'm prepared to be patient because there's quite a list of it.
Yep.
That takes some time. That's no problem.
Right. Okay. Can we begin over to that? Yes, Julia. I will discuss your question at the beginning of the meeting 2 hours ago. With Matthew, we'll see if we can get that on.
That's fine. I am going to bring up another item, which was the education and access to school places. I think we're in a position at county level to have more detail around the short-term place strategy, really, for places in the next few years. Certainly, all the feedback from school communities should be with the Education Authority now. So it might be, I don't know if rather than it take up time, if it's something, it's just a timely thing, that I think we did say we'd look at in January as soon as the data was available. So it could be in written form, if that helps the meeting, rather than it taking up a lot of time as an item.
Well, I mean, whatever is, I don't mind having lots of items on the agenda if the item can be, graphics or numbers, etc., then that'd be okay.
Yeah, it's just to highlight, there was a particular issue raised at Bury Liaison meeting last week around the potential reduction in roles at Southlands High School, and that's where we've got the the deficit really in school places, you know, not enough for a new school, but yet a real worry, and lots of journeys being made across the borough and out of the borough. So we might have some good news, and at least we might know what the strategy is from county as far as you know, what schools are open to increase their roles and assist in making sure that there's a school place for everyone within our district and beyond.
Are the school place allocations due out before the next meeting? Have any idea?
They should have been available in January. In fact, at Education Scrutiny last week, we asked for the issue to be tracked, and it should come back to the chair of the Scrutiny Committee.
Right. So they'll be out before the March meeting, so we could get some figures on the March meeting about what's been allocated this year.
As soon as possible, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can we make a note of that? Anything else? I brought up the subject of grass cutting, and I think it'd be good to get Councillor Lowe in to say what arrangements are for this next year. I'm concerned about. I have been for about 2 years now, but it'd be.